Hey everyone, Bandit here. Today I've got something a little special for you. It's a picture of what I used to look like when I was younger. Wasn't I so cute? What's that? You don't think this was me back in the day? Oh. Is it because it looks completely different and is an entirely different species than what I am? If you didn't think this thing was me, because spoiler alert, it wasn't, then chances are that you've probably wondered at some point in your Zelda fandom about Moblins, for instance. You know, those tall, lanky, long, pig-nose looking enemies from Breath of the Wild used to be tall, buff, stub-nosed enemies from Ocarina of Time, or even the original Legend of Zelda. You see what I mean? It doesn't make sense. And this applies to several other enemies as well, like the wizzrobes, or the Bokoblins, or the Keese. And while I'm sure that in the real world, these differences are probably just due to different designers over the years designing different things, or maybe even different teams entirely. But what Nintendo & Co. have designed outside in the real world about the world of Zelda has become canon within the world of Zelda. That's how canon works. If it wasn't, then literally nothing would be canon. So this begs the question, of course. Canonically speaking, lore-wise, what gives? Why do enemies like the Moblins look so vastly different depending on what point in the series you're looking at them? I'm so glad you asked. I made a video explaining why. You're watching it right now. So be sure to like this video if you like this video. Don't like this video if you don't. And subscribe if you haven't already. You won't regret it. Anyway, here we go. So let's take a closer look real quick at some Zelda enemies and how different they've looked over the years. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the most obviously changed enemies is the Moblin, which is an enemy that's been a staple in the Zelda franchise all the way back to the original Legend of Zelda. In the beginning, the Moblins were somewhat bulldog-like in their faces, like stubby nose, flappy jowls, and floppy ears and big teeth. The works. But later on in A Link to the Past, the Moblin enemies were redesigned to have pig-like faces instead of dog-like faces, and they only appeared within the Dark World, which, for those of you who know, could have explained the appearance difference since the Dark World actually changes the physical appearance of whoever enters the Dark World. But thanks to a later entry into the series, we know that this is not a possible explanation, but I'll get into that later on in the video. Dog Moblins, or Dogblins as I like to call them, made a reappearance in the next game, Link's Awakening, alongside the newer pig-faced Moblins called Bokoblins. And that is their official name, I didn't make that up, which was the pig version from the previous game, A Link to the Past. What's interesting is that both of these enemies were present at the same time in the same game, but strangely enough, when the remake came out for the Nintendo Switch, there were no Dogblins anymore. All of them had been redesigned to just fit the pig-like appearance of the Bokoblins. And I would try to explain this discrepancy stuff, but it doesn't matter anyway because, spoiler alert, it was all a dream. So while their appearance does matter, it really doesn't, though. Moving on, the Moblins from Ocarina of Time, which did not take place inside a dream, revert back to their Dogblin original appearance. But yet in Wind Waker, they're pig-like again. In the Four Swords, they were pigs. In Twilight Princess, they didn't make an appearance in Twilight Princess. In Skyward Sword, they're neither, I think. And finally, currently in Breath of the Wild, they are back to their pig-like appearances, just with long anteater noses, for some reason. Now, the Moblin's name in Japanese is actually Moriburin, which is a combination of two words, mori and goroburin, which literally translates to forest goblin. Now, normally in fantasy worlds such as The Legend of Zelda, goblins are a species. Like, you don't have multiple kinds of goblins within the same universe, except for if you're talking about Middle-earth. Because in the Middle-earth franchise, goblins are honestly just humanoid monsters, and their specific features like facial structure, body size, and structure is really changeable. Honestly, if you're watching The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit and you see an ugly monster, chances are it's a goblin. Or an orc, which is the same thing. Maybe, depends on who you ask. Anyway, the point is normally a goblin is just one specific kind of monster, right? But since Moblins in the Legend of Zelda timeline go from being undefined in Skyward Sword to pig-like in Four Swords to dog-like in Ocarina of Time to pig-like and then to dog-like and then to pig-like again with a weird long nose, this implies that the reasons for their differences isn't just evolution because they're flip-flopping back and forth. And we know that the pig-like Moblins can't be just Dogblins that went to the Dark World and came back because the first time we see pig-like Moblins is in Four Swords, before the Dark World, which Ganondorf created after the events of Ocarina of Time, after which he got the full Triforce of Power. That was sucky. Let me do that again. Because Ganondorf created the Dark World after Ocarina of Time, after he had obtained the full Triforce within the Sacred Realm. And we see the pig Moblins in Four Swords. Before Ocarina of Time, before the Dark World. And you could say that both Bokoblins and Dogblins are the same species, but just slight variations within the same species because they're both humanoid and walk on 2 feet. But in my opinion, that's like saying dogs and pigs are the same species because they walk on 4 legs. In regards to their taxonomy, dogs and pigs share the same classes, but after that, they're entirely different. So literally, dogs are as similar to pigs as humans are. So yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. What I'm trying to say with all of this is that Dogblins and Bokoblins are 2 different species of monster that are both referred to as Moblin. And Moblins aren't the only monsters in the Zelda franchise that this weird species confusion has happened to. For the sake of time, I won't go into the same amounts of detail for the other species of monsters, but take wizzrobes for example. Originally, they were just undead humans, all the way up until Wind Waker, where they randomly appeared like bird-like humanoids. Which I guess could mean that they're undead Rito. Huh. That would be an interesting theory. Bokoblins, which were introduced to the series in The Wind Waker, were initially pig-like with long ears and pig snouts and a horn, and they showed signs of intelligence with their clothing and weapons. And then they became, I guess, just classic goblin-like in Twilight Princess with hair, but then they lost their horns, and then in Skyward Sword they got their horns back, kept their hair, and in Breath of the Wild currently they have no hair with a single horn, and they're apparently of lower intelligence because they go around with just crude weapons and very little clothing, which is clearly a sign of low intelligence. And Keese have clearly lost something over the years. Now I could go on to other species of enemies, but I think I've made my case quite clear. The species of monsters in the entire Zelda franchise have been shown to be completely different depending on what point in the timeline you're looking at them. Lore-wise, I think this only has one possible explanation that fits every piece I just talked about. See, some people assume that Ganon was responsible for creating all the monsters across the entire Legend of Zelda franchise. This notion does have some merit to it because whenever you kill a monster, it just kind of explodes normally into this purple mist of malice. But personally, I think it has a different, much simpler explanation. The terms Moblin or Bokoblin or even wizzrobe could potentially refer not to that monster's species, but rather to the rank that that monster holds within Ganon's army. The monsters themselves are just simply different species of beings within the universe of the Legend of Zelda. I would call it Hyrule, by the way, but there are clearly lands outside Hyrule due to several sources from in-game content. Anyway, these different monster species are recruited and then given a rank and title name according to their abilities. The foot soldiers that are good at swinging weapons but not much else are called Bokoblins. The ones that are a little bit bigger than the Bokoblins and can swing bigger weapons are called Moblins. The variations that are dead and brought back to life by Ganon's magic or wizzrobe magic are called Stall and then whatever enemy they are. Magic users are called wizzrobes and so on and so forth. Now, some enemies, like lynels for instance, have always had the same appearance across the franchise. So yes, their species could be referred to as lynel. There's no evidence against that. But for most of the other enemies out there, I think this rank terminology appears to be the only explanation. Now, I could end the video right there and ask you guys what you think about it, but I'd like to go a little bit further into the realm of just speculation and hopes of what we might see in the future. See, if the enemy names are really just referring to the rank of that specific kind of monster within Ganon's army, that must mean that there are some of these species of monsters roaming around out there that are not a part of Ganon's army, right? Meaning that there could be tribes of Bokoblins or whatever their real names are, just out there in the woods or maybe in their own little villages as neutral or even friendly parties that we have yet to meet. And what if one day, be it in Breath of the Wild 2 or the next Zelda game on down the line, should it ever arrive, we eventually meet some of these friendly monsters and befriend them? That would be pretty cool, and I know that at least Kilton would be into the idea. But until then, this has all been just my theory. What did you guys think? Are the terms Moblin and Bokoblin just the ranks of the monsters in Ganon's army, since those monsters have been shown to be entirely different species across the franchise? Or does it literally not matter because it was just different designers having a different go at the same kind of enemy? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, thank you so much for watching. Huge thanks as always to my Bandit crew who make my day every single day. And please say hello to the following new people. Welcome to George M, Eric P, Alex S, Phineas, and Gamer World, who have all joined the ranks of my elite. If you watching are interested in doing the same, then that join button is located right below any of my videos Or you can press that subscribe button with the bells on. That's just as good. But anyways, that's all I've got for this one. So as always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. This is Bandit, looking forward to seeing you in the next one, and signing out. Peace!